This week in Sci-Fi, we've got our eye on the moon is falling into cinemas this week. Is this the end of the road for Picard? All new sci-fi from Stargate and Star Trek producers, and a look at sci-fi's chances this award season. Welcome to Eye on Sci-Fi, I'm Raymond Fedora. Disaster epic Moonfall lands in cinemas this week. This is one we've been keeping an eye on because of the monumental scale of the film's premise. The moon drops out of orbit and heads for Earth, apparently controlled by alien technology that's discovered inside. Astronauts are sent to the moon to deal with the menace, but it's hard to guess how something this crazy will end. Although this is a Roland Emmerich film, so you can expect lots of destruction. The studio has released a couple of new clips ahead of the February 3 release. Check out the description for links to those details. Raising Dion is back on screens this week. The series follows a mother who has to deal with a son, Dion, as he develops superhero abilities. In season 1, they had to defeat the Crooked Man, and this season picks up 2 years later as Dion meets another boy in school with superpowers. Soon enough, a series of alarming events unfold with Dion and his mother fighting to save the entire city. Season 2 is available on Netflix from February 1st. Raised by Wolves also returns to screens this week. In this series, the parenting is done by androids who are trying to keep a group of human children safe on what can only be described as a very weird planet. Season 1 ended as the androids were attempting to reach an atheist colony in the planet's tropical zone, and as the new season starts, the group appears to have made it safely. But not all is well in the colony, and it looks as though there will be plenty of the violence and biblical references we saw last season. Season 2 is available on Binge from February 3. The Sci-Fi Channel has ordered a new series called The Ark from executive producers Denis Villeneuve and Jonathan Glasner. The series is set 100 years in the future on a planetary colonization ship that encounters a disaster before they can reach their destination. Despite that, the series seems to be aiming for an optimistic and inspirational tone, which may offer some relief from the darkness and grit of other TV sci-fi at the moment. Extra points if you spotted the Stargate connection between the EPs, Devlin for the movie and Glasner for SG-1. The series goes into production in March and will keep you updated on release dates. Showtime have released a trailer for their new series, The Man Who Fell to Earth. Based on the Walter Tevis novel of the same name, the series has been developed by Star Trek's Alex Kurtzman. It's expected Paramount Plus will release it in Australia sometime this autumn. And Paramount Plus have released a new trailer for their TV remake of video game Halo. We've seen a few teasers before, but they've all been very coy. This one finally gives some idea of what the series will be about. Check out the video description for links to the trailer. Halo premieres on March 24. Doctor Who has been named the second most beloved BBC show of all time in a public poll taken as part of the broadcaster's centenary celebrations. As one of the world's longest-running sci-fi series, it's nice to see some recognition, although The Doctor represents the only sci-fi in the poll. While modern audiences might not be able to remember back to the likes of Blake's Seven, we thought Red Dwarf might at least have been in with a chance. The poll's most beloved series was the comedy Only Fools and Horses. Confirmation this week that Season 3 of Picard will be the last. The man himself broke the news in a recent interview, but given Sir Patrick is now in his 80s, it hasn't come as a huge surprise. The third season is already in production, although Season 2 only hit screens in March. And Denis Villeneuve has been nominated for Outstanding Directorial Achievement for Dune at this year's Directors Guild of America Awards. This is a pretty big deal, especially for a sci-fi director. He's up against Paul Thomas Anderson for Licorice Pizza, Kenneth Branagh for Belfast, Jane Campion for The Power of the Dog, and Steven Spielberg for West Side Story. The inaugural Eye on Sci-Fi Screen Award season kicks off this week, celebrating the best sci-fi on film and TV in Australia during 2021. We'll be presenting nominations for different categories each week so that viewers can vote for their favourite. Those results will be combined with the votes of our expert panel, and at the end of the season, we'll announce the winners in a special edition of the show. This week's category is Best Actor in a TV Series, and the nominations are Dominic Tipper, The Expanse; Alan Tudyk, Resident Alien; Bae Doona, The Silent Sea; Joel Kinnaman for All Mankind; and Golshifteh Farahani for Invasion. You can vote now at ionsci-fi.com. And joining me now to discuss the week in sci-fi and the upcoming award season is our North American correspondent, Christian Baines. Thanks for joining us, Christian.
Thanks, Raymond. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's get straight into it. How is the award season shaping up for sci-fi?
Look, I think sci-fi has always got a bit of a challenge with particularly mainstream award shows. The Oscars tend to be swayed more toward drama and traditional drama and comedy films. But this year, I think sci-fi does have a good shot, particularly with Dune. And the game changer with that just now has been Denis Villeneuve being nominated for the Directors Guild Award. So, the Academy's been fond of his work and his movies for quite a number of years. They've sort of been circling around, recognizing that. I don't think we can expect Dune to get a Best Picture or a Best Director statue on the night. I think Jane Campion's gorgeous film Power of the Dog has probably got the best shot at both of those awards, but I do expect it to do extremely well in the technical categories, as well as sound and probably score as well. Another category to look out for is Best Animated Feature Film, and particularly Mitchell and the Machines is probably the best hope for a sci-fi there. There is an outside chance for Spider-Man: No Way Home to pick up an award in the visual effects category. But I think in terms of sci-fi, it's definitely going to be Dune's night. But that's not until the end of March, so we've still got a ways to go as yet.
And how are you going to break the news to Spider-Man fans that it may not win as many awards as they'd like it to?
Well, Spider-Man fans, I don't think will need to be worrying too much. The Golden Tomatoes also came out recently, recognizing the most lauded films of 2021. And Spider-Man: No Way Home was the #1 film across all genres, across all theatrical or wide or narrow releases. So it's the most critically acclaimed film of the year. So I think Marvel fans have got to be happy with that. In terms of best sci-fi and fantasy specifically, now keep in mind that on Rotten Tomatoes, this is a separate and distinct genre from superheroes, so superhero movies aren't considered in this. But in terms of top 5, number 5, you had 9 Days, which is an American supernatural drama in which souls must vie for the right to inhabit the living. Number 4 was actually from Poland. It's called Never Gonna Snow Again. And this was Poland's submission for the Best Foreign Language Film for last year's Oscars. It didn't get a nomination, but it did get 7 Polish film awards, including Best Cinematography. Number 3 was Lapsus, which is another American film. It's a small indie, kind of a satirical look at the gig economy, which leaves just the top 2 for sci-fi and fantasy from the last year. And in number 2 slot was Dune. So Dune was beaten out, at least with critics, for the Golden Tomatoes this year. And the film that ended up beating it was The Green Knight, which is David Lowery's fantasy film, an adaptation of the novel Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. So it's been kind of a bit of a creeper hit. It came out with very moderate fanfare. It's done modest business at the box office, as a lot of films have. During COVID, trying to battle opening and closing of cinemas and so forth. But it's been well received, and it's kind of grown with word of mouth over the year. Other films that rounded out the top 10, you had Alexandre Aja's Oxygène, Godzilla vs. Kong, and the twisted stoner comedy Fried Barry. Now, of course, the Rotten Tomatoes also recognize television. And again, they separate out superheroes into their own genre there. And again, very good awards for Marvel. WandaVision won the most critically acclaimed show of the year. It also won Best Limited Series, with Loki coming in third. So again, Marvel fans have got no reason to complain there. But several of the sci-fi fantasy shows that did well. Shadow and Bone, the fantasy series based on Leigh Bardugo's books. Resident Alien, the Dark Horse comic adaptation, starring Alan Tudyk. The Witcher season 2 made the top 5 as well. The Expanse season 5. Expanse continues to be a critical darling and favorite. And the number one sci-fi fantasy series, according to Rotten Tomatoes for 2021, was DC Comics adaptation Sweet Tooth.
Now, there's a newish kind of entry to the streaming platforms that is really going all in with sci-fi at the moment, and that is Apple TV Plus. Could you talk about some of the strengths that they have in their kind of category of sci-fi?
Yeah, I think the biggest strength with Apple TV Plus is going for, I guess, slightly heavier, slightly larger, more ambitious sci-fi projects that are clearly targeted at adults. It's been a great way. They've been consistent with that. It's a great way to separate themselves in the market. So they now have heavy hitters like the adaptation of the Foundation series. And then another one of Apple's big hits has been For All Mankind, which, for those who aren't yet initiated to it, follows kind of an alternate timeline of asking the question, what if the Russians beat the Americans to the moon? And what follows on from there? So it's kind of a fantastic look at a whole alternative timeline, just asking a lot of questions about American identity and diversity and science, and how we a global approach to space exploration. So that's kind of the direction that Apple's taken. It does distinguish them quite well from Disney Plus, who of course sits very happily on their established properties, or Netflix, which is a lot of tends to dominate market share by sheer volume of content. So Apple's taken a slightly different tack, and it seems to be paying off for them so far.
Now, a movie that is coming out this week in Australia is Moonfall. Can you tell us a bit about how it's shaping up in terms of its performance, do you think, and in terms of the reception by sci-fi fans for Moonfall?
Oh, I think, well, we've kind of touched on this before, in that Roland Emmerich, he has his own approach. He has his own way of doing things. He makes the films that he wants to see, and he makes the films that he knows audiences want to see. He's not overly concerned with whether the plots make a lot of sense. That's not why you go to a Roland Emmerich film. You go to a Roland Emmerich film to see famous things destroyed in spectacular ways. So Moonfall promises to deliver, more of the same. I think it's going to do well enough to keep Roland Emmerich making more movies. He certainly sells tickets. So ultimately, that's all it takes to keep making future projects. So I don't think it's got anything to worry about. I mean, it's definitely releasing into a different landscape than his last few films. So, but I think his movies have their own particular niche audience and a nice bit of mass appeal as well that should result in some healthy receipts.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for enlightening us and sharing all the news with us, Christian.
You're very welcome. It's been my pleasure.
And that was the week in sci-fi. For more news and to vote in this week's awards category, go to ionsci-fi.com.